Huge amount of that was impossible. So, okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks. Do you want to log in or how do you want to? Be here. Okay. Good morning to all of you who are with us. No. Do you want me to turn? Got it. Hi. We're getting all situated. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, we're a couple minutes behind while we were getting myself set up on the login for this. So hope everybody's doing well today. I am co-hosting with the one and only Miss Angie Hannon. There's no rivalry here. Colin, if you're on, sorry, there's just no rivalry here. You gotta get over it. How's everybody doing today? Can you hear us okay? Yep. Okay, great. I'm just going to give it just another minute or two to see who else joins in. And then what we're going to do is here, I'm going to turn it a little more so they can see better. And that's okay. What we're going to do is we'll just kind of do a review of putting together a transaction template for purchase agreements. I can show you the kind of the standard documents that I put in all of my purchase agreements. And then we're going to go back in and log into a property on the MLS and run through the process of creating a purchase agreement transaction through the wizard. And while we're doing that and kind of going through the documents, Angie's going to be able to chime in and I'll chime in, you know, where needed to just kind of talk about strategies for purchase agreements. And for the 8 participants on here today, I appreciate your jumping in. There are a lot more people who need help with purchase agreements, but I guess they're busy today. So
hopefully they're out showing properties.
Yeah, that would be ideal. As long as you're out showing, that's okay. Okay, let me get a couple quick things set up here and we'll be right with you. I have a ton of
So I can tell you my question already before we get to it.
What's your question?
So what I always get confused on is and I've had to fix it before. This purchase agreement is subject to an addendum. I never know when it is and when it isn't. I thought anytime you attached addendums to it, it was, but apparently that's not the case. So
yeah, your purchase agreement is subject to any addendums that you are turning in with the original purchase agreement. And then once that purchase agreement is executed, as in signed by all parties and delivered, then anything that happens from that point forward is an amendment to the purchase agreement. So purchase addendums come during the period of time where we're negotiating, we submit an original offer, or we're negotiating on that offer and through contingencies.
I like to think of it as, and maybe this isn't answering your question, Jennifer, but addendum is adding to the purchase agreement, like you're adding it at the beginning. An amendment is changing. To amend is to change. So if you're changing anything after everything's been signed, that's when you use an amendment. So are you saying that you've had addendums that you've had as part of the purchase agreement, but they weren't marked on that last page?
So I was told that, so like the CIC documents,
As
You
long
have-
as you were making something greater than your prorated year to date, that it would be more likely that
Sorry, that was, I'm muting someone. Go ahead.
Oh. That the addendum, the CIC documents, that does not, you don't have to check the box for subject to the addendum.
Box that says you're attaching the CIC addendum to it, not an additional addendum. Like the subject to an addendum would be something that you've created, like a new addendum, not the lead-based paint, not the CIC, a fresh new one that you've created.
Okay, that's what I was confused on. Okay,
Right.
perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions before I kind of, I switch over and share my screen and we get into it? No, okay. As you can tell, I'm perfect at Zoom yet.
Okay, I would be there.
Okay, so here's our transaction desk, okay? Just a quick refresher. If you're over here on the far left side, you see that that first icon is the dashboard. You can customize this to look the way that you want it to look. And you do that by going over to the far right side of your screen and clicking the little lock. And if you click unlock, you can then select how you want your icons here and your shortcuts to appear on that dashboard. Once you've done that, and you click lock to hold the screen in place, and it will look however you want it to look. I'm going to get in the process of doing some checklists. That's process change I want to put in place for more agents who need a little more step-by-step instruction. But I have mine set up for quick access to creating a transaction, starting the signing, and then, to getting into my actual transaction folders and forms if needed. Now, if we go back over to the left-hand side and we scroll down to the bottom again, here is where we're going to find our transaction templates. If you just hover over the icon, it's going to tell you what it is. So that's the easiest way for you to find it, just in case you've forgotten. Click on transaction templates. And then in here, you're going to build your template. So I already have a purchase agreement packet, and I'm just going to highlight that and show you what that looks like. So for my purchase agreements, I do not put the affiliated business disclosure arrangement or document in it. And the reason for that is I include that in my buyer representation every single time. So if you created a template for buyer representation packet, have that document included in that to ensure that it's just signed up front and you don't miss anything in the process. If you scroll down here to forms and click that box open, you can see all of the forms that I have listed in my standard purchase agreement packet. Now, you can customize this however it works best for you. I put into this the forms that I'm using the most often, right? And if you know that you would rather have a few additional forms in there and then just delete them out of the transaction if you don't need them, you can certainly have that. One example would be the common interest community property addendum. I could add this to the file by going over here to forms, click on that, and then in the search bar, I'm going to type CIC. And I am looking for, yeah, there was two, so I want 2020. That's what I was looking for, the date. Yeah, so make sure you pick the most recent date. For whatever reason, when our forms update, they don't always delete out the previous form that was in there. And if you don't know this, typically August 1st or that first week in August, we always end up with a new rollout of our forms. Forms committee from the Minnesota Association of Realtors do their updating to the forms based on recommendations and everything that have come in from brokerages. And we will learn what those new updates are to the forms. I'm going to be taking a class on that so I can share it with the entire team. We don't know what the changes are going to be yet, but every August in the beginning of the month, you should anticipate that that's when we're going to do our new forms rollout. In here, you can see this common interest community property addendum was most recently updated in August of 2020, but underneath it, they still have some of the other ones from previous dates. So they have the 2019. Just always double check for that date and select the most recent change. Okay, so over here on the right, you're just going to click in this circle and you can do multiple forms if you want. So if you wanted to add more forms, I would just type in sale of buyer's property. And here's the addendum for that, and I could just add that. And now I have 2 items in my basket. And I'm going to click add at the top, and it's going to add those forms to this template. And then you can come over here to the front and you can drag these into an arrangement if you would like. What I like to do is I like to have my purchase agreement at the top, and then any addendums that the purchase agreement is subject to will be the next in line. So I would move up this sale of buyer's property, and I would move up this CIC addendum. And then from there, I like to have my personal property agreement, my arbitration disclosure, and then the last is always my compensation disclosure, because when I write purchase agreements, I prefer to have that last document at the very bottom of the file. And the reason for that is oftentimes if you're working with a buyer, the executed purchase agreement is going to be returned to you without that document included in it, because the sellers are not required to have that as part of their package that's turned in. And so you might get a notice from one of our transaction coordinators saying they need a copy of that compensation disclosure turned in. Either get in a habit of putting it at the end of your purchase agreement so it's really easy for you to print out, or just be prepared that you would be sending that out separately to have them signed. I don't want to do a 2-part process of having a separate document signed for that. So I just put it at the end of my purchase agreement, and then I can print that one PDF to turn in if needed. Okay, I don't think we have anybody waiting, do we?
Sure. So I would do that as part of my, even though it can be change based on the compensation from solicitation. Is that what you need to do in this? Because whatever that listing agent is willing to pay out.
Sure.
So do you ever, and this is just spitballing here, when you have your buyers sign this all paperwork, you take that whole package from a design and save it, send it out to those things that you would send back to them?
I can. In some instances I might, in some instances I might not. It really just depends on the circumstance. If it matches what they're offering, yes. If I'm charging something back to my client, no. So
You put the $6.95 admin fee on that, correct?
correct. Yep.
Okay.
So I am less concerned about them seeing our admin fees, because I know 99% of brokerages out there are charging an admin fee. They typically range in cost from $500, which is the cheapest I've seen, all the way up to $1,000. What I usually do is I tell clients that for the most part, every brokerage has that fee, and ours is somewhere in the middle because we're primarily a virtual brokerage, and so we try to save on costs with offering things all online. And so that's why our broker commission fee is somewhere in kind of the middle range. I'll be forthright and say you might find it cheaper somewhere else, but no matter what, you would expect that, most brokerages now will have them.
Okay.
I'm less concerned about sharing that portion of the document on the sell side, because I know that 9 times out of 10, 99 out of 100 times, the seller is going to return the packet to me without that document attached anyway. And so it's just a personal preference, I think. Yeah, but very valid point. And then just before we move on, I want to highlight this a little bit more, and I'm going to open this document so that I can show you what it looks like. So everybody's seen the compensation disclosure. There's 2 kinds. This one I have built in mine. I'm just used to using it, but EXP also has one where it might list some costs that the builder or an agent or a third party is contributing. You can use that one in your transaction template if you want. This is my preferred form that I use. But on the buyer representation agreement, in It's at the bottom of the first section, our first page, and I can't remember the line item numbers. I'm sorry. I think it's like line item 43. But it states in there that a compensation disclosure will be given to a buyer at the time that they write the purchase agreement. So you can do a compensation disclosure up front if you want to, because it highlights in there that they are given that at the time or prior to signing the purchase agreement. Okay, including it with my packet. What I do is I make an effort to inform every buyer I'm working with what that compensation is before we agree to write a purchase agreement. When I'm in person with them, I'm not sure if we do this, but I'd like to invite to it. I will tell them, okay, and in our buyer representation agreement, my commission is 2.7%. Particular listing is 2.5%. So I just want to let you know that compensation disclosure that will come to you is going to say 2.5% is coming from the seller and 0.2% will be coming back from you. And I don't always charge it, but if it's a lower price deal, I might have discretion. If it's a 2% commission or a 2.3% commission versus 2.7, that can really add up depending on the price point of the house. So at my discretion, I choose when I'm charging that back. So just so you know, you have flexibility to do that. How do you handle it? Whatever you say is fine. This is why we're bringing more than one person in. I want people to have, you know, options with what works best for you.
Yeah.
So
I've never charged my buyer the difference. I've never have.
sure.
So for me, when I fill this out, I just say the sell side is, you know, 2.5 or 2.7. The only thing they're really paying me is that $6.95 admin fee, which isn't even going to me. It's going to the company. But yeah, I don't charge them the difference no matter what.
Angie is a nicer person than I am. Again, it's discretion. It's not something I do every time, but if it's a really difficult client and I have earned every penny of that commission.
That I can understand.
And then just before we move on here, everyone knows that when you're filling out this compensation disclosure, this top line here, line 7 on this particular form, I'm typing in whatever that commission is received from the sell side. And down here under this line 11 is where you're typing in what it is that they are going to receive or have to pay in for our broker admin commission. So that's the line that goes on. Does everybody know that? Yep. Okay, great. Not rocket science. If you're pre-editing your forms to fill this in so that it's going to show from now on, you can just go ahead and type this in and then make sure you click save. And when you back out of the transaction, you want to click update once you've edited all your forms. And now every time I use this purchase agreement packet, those line items are pre-filled for me. So I don't have to go through and type it every single time. And it saves a lot of time in writing a purchase agreement.
But you'll just want to make sure that if it isn't 2.7 that you're charging it.
Exactly. So you're always going to run through your forms and make sure your forms are in alignment with the actual offer. And as Angie brought out, if the commission is offset, if it's really 2.5%, you want to make that adjustment on that form. In most cases for me, I've seen it's 2.7, so I'm okay leaving that there. But we always know that the broker commission is $6.95. So I'm putting that in. And then in the event I'm covering it for a client, I will just delete it out when I'm actually writing the purchase agreement. Any questions about setting up a transaction template before we move on?
I'm not about setting up a template, more so I've never added the transaction, the admin fee on the compensation disclosure. It's just been in the buyer rep. So we should start putting it on the compensation disclosure as well.
Needs to be on the compensation disclosure, correct?
Okay.
So it is written right into our buyer representation agreement. If you don't have that written in, you need to write that in on in the other tab on the last page 4 of the buyer rep. But for sure, it's a commission. It has to be disclosed. So
Got it.
yeah, for compliance sake, make sure everybody's doing that. Good question, Ashley. Thank you for asking that. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, so again, when you're in here, just click update and then you can just click the back button to back out and you'll see all of it. You can do, you'll notice here I have a buyer rep agreement for myself. I have a listing packet. I have a purchase agreement packet. There's some other templates in here. Pemberton Homes has a listing packet template in here. I have a very specific way that I'd like to do my paperwork in terms of the order. And I don't want to spend time realigning forms. So that's the reason why I choose to create my own templates, and I'm doing my purchase agreements consistently every single time. And getting in that habit and that pattern is what saves me a lot of time. You should be able to run through a purchase agreement in 10 to 15 minutes, you know, depending on the terms and everything else, if you have a template like this set up. So, okay, let's move on here. So I'm gonna find a property. Bear with me 1 second. Do you have any active listings?
No. Fortunately not.
Okay. I know Parker does. I was just gonna think about using one of our team's listings, but we don't have to do that. Okay, I'm just picking a random property here that I can look up and write a purchase agreement. So I'm gonna go over here to the MLS and pull up my search. Type in the address of the property. If you don't know this already, the MLS is somewhat fickle, right? So when you're doing a search like this, less is more is the rule of thumb. If you're typing in a specific address, don't just space and type in place or lane or avenue, just type in the original number. You see, well, I have Hawthorne in here, and I'm bringing up my screen that you can see my finger. Hawthorne in here, now I just click space, and instantly down here it says 0 matches. Whereas if I just do backspace, we're back to 6 matches. So if you ever run into that, remember less is more when you're searching a property.
And you're ever going not full name of the street, you can just do like HAW, or whatever. And then come understand or not understand. Really? Okay, did you hear that little tip from Angie? She taught me something new.
If you just do like the first part of the name of the property and then hit star next to it, it'll pull it up for you. So neat. Thank you for that tip.
Okay, so we have our property over here. Imagine while you're getting really familiar with doing purchase agreements, you use Wizard. I mean, I've done thousands of these and I still use Wizard just because it's systematic and it takes me through step by step to make sure I'm not missing anything.
So here I would just click on the property that we're going to highlight. You can see here that there's supplements listed. I'm going to click on the supplements. When we went through a system update a couple years ago, what they did is they were to sync documents under supplements on the MLS to transaction desk. So you don't have to save every one of these documents on your computer anymore the way that we used to. Automatically show up under the documents tab in a transaction when you are creating a new purchase agreement. And we'll show you how that works as well. You might already be familiar with it, but just in case you're not. So I'm going to go back to this page, and then here along our icon bar, everybody knows this is where you can find icons for showing times, schedule showing, if you want the map, additional photos, supplements, etc. You're going to click on the, what did you say? Trust funds, yep. The forms tab here. And it's going to pull up the wizard automatically, right? So we're creating a transaction now. What I'd like to do is I like to list what kind of a transaction it is. If it's a listing agreement, I'm going to have it say listing agreement and then the address. In this case, it would be a purchase agreement. So I'm going to have it say purchase agreement. And then that's how I sort my properties and my transactions. When it's comfortable for you, but I would encourage you to come up with a system that works. I have a template here fickle, sorry. I'm gonna go down to purchase agreement ticket with my name on it. That's the one that I preset with all my documents. And it will have all of my pre-populated documents that come up. Under import data, I want this to say North Star MLS, and this is the current MLS listing number. It's gonna pull all of that information into the transaction. I'm a buyer tenant agent here, and yes, I want to use Wizard. Now, if you don't, you can click off of that, and then you're going to have to build all of your forms that's for step-by-step items yourself, plugging in your contacts and everything else. If I use the Wizard, it's going to take me through like 5 steps in the process to put that data in. So I click that and then click create. Timing. I don't want to say chunk.
So far, you're saying everything I would have said.
I have to train you roughly 10 minutes before. Oops, sorry about that. I'm sharing all that stuff on my dashboard with you. Been busy working lately. Okay, so here we are in the Wizard, right? This is step 1 of 5. That's what it's doing. It's taking us through the details. States up here, I've named it, it's a purchase agreement. If it doesn't have down here on the right-hand side, school district, I like to put that in there. It's really a preference. I just got into the habit of that when I was new in real estate. It has the important information, which is the legal description of the purchase of the property. Believe it or not, that's one of the 4 fundamental requirements of a purchase agreement. You don't even need an address, you just need the legal description. Okay, over here under purchase information, I'm assuming I'm gonna find full price on this. I'm gonna put in 1% earnest money. And down here under what property includes, I always like to go back to the listing and I highlight what it states here under appliances. So scroll down and it says it comes with a dishwasher, dryer, microwave range, refrigerator, washer. Copy that and then go back over and paste that in. This is going to show up on the first line of your purchase agreement. I'll also add to that all window treatments and curtain rods.
I don't know if it matters to anybody else, but I do permanent window treatments. Like some people will take the curtains.
The actual curtains themselves can come, yeah, I'm just here. Yes, yeah. And you can actually say that. So Angie brings up a really good, yes, go ahead, Jennifer.
It's really hard to hear it, like the audio's going in and out. Sorry.
Here. No, I appreciate letting me know. Is that happening for everybody? Yeah.
Yes. You catch
Sorry.
like a word here and there.
Yeah, there's been a couple comments in the chat room. It goes in and out. I don't know. It's not.
Problem for me too. Okay. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I think it's the bandwidth for the internet. We're gonna.
This phone.
We're reducing in this room to see if it's a little better. Was there any what parts, I guess, was it the garble so I can just circle back?
I've been able to track what you're saying, Jilayna. It's just, it goes in and out.
Okay. Is everybody else so far on the same page? As in understand how we've gotten to this point in setting transaction?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully it's better. I apologize. It's going to be better when we get to Edina, that's for sure. Okay, piecing it together. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate your commenting. Okay. So back here under property includes, I keep doing that with my hand. I'm just used to in-person training. I have all window treatments and curtain rods. Angie likes to put in like permanent window treatments. You could certainly say window blinds sometimes say window blinds. The rule of thumb is if it's attached, it needs to stay with the property because it's a fixture. And if it can come off the curtain rod, it's not designed to be permanent, so curtains don't stay with the property. Then under property excludes, I'm going to put not applicable in this case. But this is where you would list if on the MLS they said refrigerator in the kitchen does not stay. Or if it says swing set in backyard does not stay with property, or some other type of fixture, all TV mounts will go with current owner. Then we would want to list here what is excluded from the sale of a property. So we have documentation of that fixture being removed. Is everybody here okay so far?
Yep, good on my end.
So that's what I will do for this page. Then click next and take me to the next step. And here's where I'm putting in my offer date, which would be today. And then scrolling down to put in my closing date, which we'll just put that out at the end of August. This is the only ones that you need on this page. And you can click next. I have tried putting in like funding dates and all of that when I've played with this process over the years, and it never shows up in the right spot on a purchase agreement. So the only ones I know that stick are offer date and closing date, just so you know. So in here, I have myself and our broker just listed. This would be a dual agent situation because who the broker is. Tia is actually the listing agent. So you can come over here and you can delete out the second point of contact so that only one name shows up. Otherwise, what happens is the first name under seller landlord is the one that's going to show up on the contract as the seller's agent. So pay attention to that. If two names show up, like sometimes it might say Parker's name and then your name as for listing agent. When a purchase agreement comes over for a property, it might have Parker as the listing agent because both of you showed up and they didn't delete one of them out. So just get in the habit of doing that when you know who the agent is. That's the actual point of contact on the sale.
Hey, we couldn't hear that comment.
It'll usually say in the agent remarks who the person of contact should be, which agent you should be putting on that and sending the offers to.
Yep, got it.
So,
Thank you.
so see here in remarks under agent, it says, please contact Tia Bellick. So I caught that when I actually opened the transaction. And that's the reason why I deleted up Julie Brown, who was her team lead. I want to make sure it's listed that Tia is actually the agent here. And then when the transaction gets delivered, it's going over to Tia. Okay, so here's where we're going to add in our contacts. I'll pick an existing contact for the time being. This is a buyer I've recently worked with. Here's another hint for you. If you already have a contact in here, that's great. If they were someone you worked with before, just make sure you're changing over the time. So if they had previously been a seller or currently a seller, then you need to switch to buy under type when you are sitting for purchase agreement, just so that their signature blocks show up in the right place in the purchase agreement. You can change the address and whatnot as needed. And then if you are having multiple people on the purchase agreement, the order that you establish contacts here is the order they will show up in on every document going forward, unless you rearrange their signatures. Any place you're going to auto import their address, their phone number, and their printed name. Now that I've added Peyton, he's always going to show up first on the purchase agreement. And then the next person that I add will show up second on the purchase agreement. So just keep that in mind. If you know that the financing is going into the wife's name and she wants to be the first person on the purchase agreement, make her the first contact that you add to this part of the transaction. This is going to add 2 for the sake of this sale. Going to next, now I'm in my forms. If I need to add or subtract a form, this is a great place to do it. On this particular property, I don't think that there was, it was built in 1996, so I don't need that base paint. So I'm over here and I'm going to delete it from my file. It's not in a homeowners association, so I don't need to have a CIC addendum, so I can delete that out. And my clients don't own a property, so I can delete out that addendum too if I want. Now I have the main primary documents that I'm going to use for a purchase agreement, and I can select next. Under documents, where I showed you how it syncs with the MLS, here are all the documents that are going to be available to include with the transaction, so that you don't have to download a separate copy of the seller's disclosure. It's already built in there for you. If you want to add at this point your client's pre-approval letter and you have that saved to your computer, you can do that just by clicking add and then uploading it from your computer. Does everybody know how to do that process? I'm assuming yes. Okay, great. Click done. Now we're into the forms. You can access your forms here, or you can go over here and access your forms if you want. All of these are going to be populated with our client's information now. So now I'm purchase agreement. And this is like putting your transaction file. So you don't have to go back out of this every time you want to access a document. You just have it using the bar across the top right here. Okay, so these bars allow you to continue to work within the transaction folder you've created. So our purchase agreement, I have my date, my client's names, earnest money. Do you have any comments about earnest money at all and tactics to use for writing PAs?
Sometimes having earnest money more than 1.5% or 1% does matter to the sellers. If you feel confident that your buyers are going to do financing requirements and it gets through that contingency, and if there's really not a lot of risk, I don't see a problem in raising the amount either. Hopefully, we're never worried about our clients not being able to close. Even if they can't, and that earnest money is not refundable to them, we're gonna keep it closer to the 1 to 1.5%.
Yeah, I would say I make recommendations on earnest money based on the type of financing and what I know about creditworthiness of my client. If it's FHA and they're doing a 1% down loan, you know, I'm probably setting it up so that there is a written statement or something, but I'm definitely not doing more than 1% earnest money. If I use 20% conventional buyer and we want to be really competitive, maybe we're 2 or 3%. They can do that just to really put like our best foot forward. And then I would write it either as a written statement where it's forfeited to the seller if the purchase agreement cancels, or I would just forfeit it up front, depending on how my clients really feel about their financing. And again, basing it on the situation, if you're in a multiple offer situation and you want to be as competitive as possible, or if you're the first person to see a property and you want to try and alienate any of those other buyers and come in hot right out of the gate. Okay, I'm line 33 here, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. Get to know this number line system. This is your friend and learning your purpose agreement. Line 33, this is where we have put into that wizard tab included property. Line 36 is what is not included or excluded from the property. We have on line 38 and 39, our purchase price. We'll pretend this is a 20% down buyer. So 20% is cash, 80% is funded. And then there is no assuming and there is no contract for deed. Your closing date is populated. If you want to do on or before to be competitive, you can click in this box and you on or before. It won't allow you to do that when you're setting up that wizard process, but you can change it while you're actually writing the purchase agreement terms.
Another tactic is to reach out to the listing agent and just see if the sellers have a preferred closing date, so that you can hopefully meet the needs of them, whether it's right away or if it's 60 days out. It might help you get that offer accepted if you use their ideal close date.
Exactly right. And I recommend you do that every single time, whether you're in multiple offers or not, because it's just a negotiating tactic. If you can meet the closing date, maybe that gives you more favoritism, even if you're asking for closing costs or you're coming in under asking price. Sometimes that's one of the most important factors to a seller. So reach out to the listing agent every time you know your clients want to make an offer and just find out where things stand and what terms the seller is looking for. Solid advice. Okay, line 52, under mortgage financing, and this is important. This section is only completed if your client is financing a mortgage, okay? They are getting a loan. If it's cash offer, you do not need to complete this section, which is not subject to mortgage financing if it's a cash offer. If it's financed offer, you're choosing is. And then you're moving to the terms. In this case, it's first mortgage, it's conventional. A lot of times there's questions about subordinate financing. You would check this box if your clients have like down payment assistance programs where it works like a second mortgage and they have to pay that back. That would be a subordinate financing situation. Okay, for now, yeah, I've well, 5 to 10 minutes. We want a small buffer between the team meetings. So I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit more quickly. Mortgage financing contingency here, you know, we would select, and it's, you know, probably a written statement has become commonplace for that. So I like to do this for my written statements, usually a week out, but I always confirm that with the lender first. I've never had my calendar look like that before. So just say August 17th. And that's a case by case basis. And then how I like to do it is I always do refunded to buyer in the event the written statement is not given out in enough time, but I would likely do retained by seller if it cancels. So otherwise, what is a written statement? It's just another thing saying another way to cancel a purchase agreement or money back. So case by case basis with your clients. They have this pre-filled. I always select any time prior to closing lender. This is where you put in lender commitment work orders. You'll see that kind of being the norm for maybe if you have an FHA property or VA property where you know it's going to need a little bit of work, feel free to put something into that category. $250, $500, something like that to ensure that the seller will make a contribution to those repairs. I always have my buyer pay for any reinspection required by the lender, but you could certainly use that as a negotiating tactic. This FHA section here is priced in line 131. It needs to match the price you offer clip free. You'll have a separate amendatory clause to sign at some point. That's basically what this is being written into the purchase agreement. Only for FHA.
Hey, sorry, Jan, I couldn't hear that last bit about the escape clause FHA.
Sure. So almost all lenders require a separate amendatory clause to be signed, which says that the house has to replace the value that he offered it, or the buyer cannot be penalized for losing their earnest money. Just FHA. So that's the only thing you're entering in the sale price property here. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I still couldn't understand that one.
Yeah, I can't hear either.
Okay, I'm sorry about the internet, guys. So line 126 to 135 talks about FHA loans. And on line 131, you're just writing in purchase price of the property. And your client will likely have a separate mandatory clause they have to sign at some point, but this term only applies to FHA.
Got it. Thank you.
Great. Lender processing fees and DVA funding fees, these all are dependent on financing as well. Under line 143 and 144, this question has come up before. Typically, I'm just writing all or none, and it depends on the circumstance. So if all of the funds are being paid by the buyer at closing for that DVA funding fee, this is what it would look like. If we want it covered by the seller as part of our terms, we'll write it like this. And it's either paid at closing or it's added into the mortgage. So that's what has to be made up front, and that's what VA offers. Doesn't apply in this case. I recommend him zero outfield or rate not applicable where it doesn't apply. Under contribution for closing costs, what are your thoughts on this right now? What are you seeing?
I'm really asking for that contributor fee. I'm not offering her money back. Yeah.
Okay. I would say it's the same. For me, it's really dependent on buyer. FHA buyers I have found are trying to get some degree of closing costs covered, but most are still prepared to pay their own. So they want to try, and you might be writing that up front, but then again, it becomes a negotiating for the purchase agreement. For inspections, select obviously electric decline, everyone knows that, whether it's contingent or not, it's made to intrusive testing. And I want to just let you know that intrusive testing no longer includes sewer scopes. In Minneapolis, that's considered a standard part of a purchase agreement, as long as they don't have to dig through a wall or anything to find access to the sewer line. You could certainly write in here to line 192 that sewer scope will be completed, or maybe a tree inspection or something to that effect. Adam just had a tree inspection written into one of his purchase agreements. So correct, Ashley. Thanks for that comment about the FHA inventory clause. Okay, and line 183, just so you know, this is referring to calendar days from final acceptance. So that period of time starts the day after your offer accepted. I think we're going to run out of time today just because we have some technical stuff and then we need to get into our team meeting quickly. But before I go on any further, I just want to know if anybody has a question about how to fill out purchase agreement. Any questions at all? Here on line 26, you'll see I have pre-selected in my transaction template to have these boxes filled. You can certainly do that as well. And then it will show up like this. You just edit as necessary while you're creating a purchase agreement. Remember my last steps. When I go through and I need to see this document, I'm looking in the transaction folder, so I click to File, click Save. And then when I need to switch to the next document to edit, you go to transaction forms right here, and you're working within the same file. You don't have to exit out and go back into the transaction a different way. And then once all my forms are edited and saved, if I want to create a signing, I'm just selecting the forms that I want to have signed, going right to this basket, and then choosing to start an authentic sign. So this is like looking inside of your transaction folder. And last week, I think we went through authentic sign pretty thoroughly, so we don't need to do that again today. What I do want to do is talk a little bit about what Jennifer had mentioned at the start. First, what I'm going to do is tell you this. Line 405, dual agency representation. This is a dual agency situation if I were writing this purchase agreement. So I would check this box and then have it signed by my buyers. If you are checking line 407, please note it says do not complete lines 408 to 424. So what happened, and authentic will probably signatures for their buyer in this area. So you do not need signatures here, but you have line 407. Okay, so this should not get filled out. The other tab, this is where I might write if I have an escalation clause that I'm going to include. I would say something like purchase price subject to escalation clause, see attached addendum. Or I would write an appraisal gap coverage or something in here, see attached addendum. And I like to write those separately, included with purchase agreement. What do you do?
Exactly the same thing, and it's what I was going to say. After this way, clarify 472 that there is an addendum attached to the offer.
Correct. So this box here, 470 to 487, this is where we select what addendums are part of the purchase agreement. And remember, all documents that are attached to the purchase agreement comprise the entire agreement. That's actual language right in our purchase agreement. So make sure you're checking the boxes for all that apply. If you have common interest community property, you're checking the 477, line 477. If it's lead-based paint, it's 480. If it's sale of a buyer's property, obviously 492, so on and so forth. If you have any questions about addendums, my recommendation is you first reach out to your sales coordinator. So whatever pod you're in, reach out to Angie, reach out to Ian, reach out to Nicole or myself. And we're your first line of defense of kind of understanding some of these things. And then if you need additional help with that, or if for some reason a situation came up where one of the sales coordinators needed a little bit more feedback, we all communicate together as a group for training. And so we will run that circumstance by each other and just kind of get a feel for what's the best direction forward. So please make sure your sales coordinator is your first line of defense for questioning. I'm going to cut it off here so we can get into our team meeting in a few minutes, but I just want to check and see if there are any last minute questions.
Thank you
No?
all.
Would it be beneficial to anyone to have additional training on a purchase agreement, on tactics to use purchase agreements, or next time we could solely focus on structuring offers, or otherwise next week we're going to end up going through the agreement process. Thank you. Oh,
catch-
welcome, Darcy. You're good for now? Okay, reach out to your sales coordinator if you need more help with anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye.